Honest J. Nowak, coming at you live. All right.
A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to HJN Graphix. And now we're basically going to be talking about something different right here. If you're very familiar with the Need for Speed series, then let me just tell you, from my own perspective, I was actually able to play all Need for Speed titles that were released on PS4. I'm not really talking about remasterings or re-releases that showed up on the PS4. I'm specifically talking about original releases that came around. At first, there was Need for Speed Rivals, which was incredible for what it was. Then there was Need for Speed 2015, which probably was more like a reboot to the series entirely. Then there was Need for Speed Payback, which at the time, I played it last year, and wow, it probably is the best. But before I had the chance to do that, I played the fourth title that came around on the PS4. The latest that showed up on the PS4, Need for Speed Heat. And Heat is, of course, the most recent. It came out in late 2019, and, well, in case you haven't already noticed a video in which that was centered on that whole entire ordeal, then, well, I'll just go ahead and explain it for you. November 2019. It was a time where I was working with the Marcus Theaters Corporation, but it was also a time where I was able to get a lot of chances in order to expand my horizons and begin to play a lot more of games on the PS4, since I was getting lots of money at the time. Not just from the theaters itself, but also from various other jobs that I was having throughout the county and the state. So, with the money I was making left and right, that gave me a lot of opportunities to take on quite a lot of new challenges, and also a lot of new financial security. But the main point about the video that I made almost 2 full years ago was the fact that I actually went ahead and purchased a PlayStation Store card so I could go ahead and buy myself a copy of Need for Speed Heat, which was a brand new release. At the time that I simply went on ahead and bought it, I went ahead and made a vlog that centered on a milestone challenge that was indeed based off of this one purchase. And so, that's pretty much what that came around to. A GWK-based milestone gave me the opportunity to go ahead and celebrate by buying a new game and downloading it. And I mean it. It was brand new. November 2019 it was released. And then, of course, I went on ahead and played it. I will say for sure that Need for Speed Heat probably is not as good as Need for Speed Payback, for a variety of reasons. It does have a rather ubiquitous storyline, in which it starts off by allowing you to pick your own character. And you have a pretty big list of different character default settings that are put into play, but when you go ahead and pick your own character, you have the option to dress up your avatar and give your avatar a name, pretty much. Which I will say is pretty impressive. The way that you can customize your own avatar before you even begin the story, it's something that I've been seeing a lot actually in most newer titles, so to speak. But especially for something like this, at the time I would consider it to be pretty good by any means. But then of course, there came along a few things. There of course came along the storyline itself. And the storyline centered on a group of racers, a couple which end up being caught by the police. This new driver, whom is of course the avatar you play as, ends up getting checked by the officer, whose license ends up getting scanned through, and the officer realizes that this avatar, your character so to speak, is not in fact involved in any sorts of street racing activities or other illegal activities having to do with nighttime street racing or otherwise. But it is important to note that as the series does progress, every single new Need for Speed title really does show quite a lot of new quirks that you can potentially get. It does show that you can get a lot of mileage out of it. And believe it or not, there was even a film adaptation of this, as Need for Speed Rivals was able to advertise, pretty much. But let's just say that Need for Speed Heat does not necessarily do things a whole lot better than most of the others. Although, of course, it does have a huge variety of different cars. And I seriously mean that. You get cars of all sorts in Need for Speed Heat. From Ferraris and Lamborghinis, to Mercedes-Benz, to Audi, to Volkswagen and Ford, to even the almighty Koenigsegg. Yeah. Who would have thought that a Koenigsegg would appear in the game? It's almost like when Rivals showed that the most powerful car that you can get was the Hennessy Venom GT. At the time, the Venom GT did pretty much give us a huge speed record that happened on land. But yet, here in Heat, this is probably what we gotta expect. The Venom GT is probably not so well known nowadays because it's a bit obscured by a lot of things. Mostly because of the newer land speed records that have been set by other vehicles. So, of course the years have gone by and plenty of other things have taken place. But let's just say for sure that Heat does have several flaws into it, other than a story that does not seem to be very well connective or not less confusing by any means. To me, I was not necessarily following through pretty well. And there were a variety of reasons why. Because here are a few of the big flaws about it. You got times where there are glitches taking place. So it's pretty obvious that this game tries to be almost like some other games out there. But yet it's almost like it was pretty much rushed. So that's an unfortunate piece of that whole entire spectrum. Another thing about it is the fact that sometimes the racing can seem unfair at times. Especially when your car is not necessarily responsive to the controls that are put into play. So it's pretty much just the basis that the controls themselves are not very responsive at times. So that's another flaw right there. A third flaw that I would like to explain is the fact that, well, at least in my own particular playthroughs, there of course was the fact that the entire plot twist itself revolves around the police being the bad guys and not the racers themselves. I mean, it's almost like trying to be rivals in a way, where you have the teams facing off against each other with all sorts of gadgets and equipment that you could potentially use at your own disposal. But here in Heat, let's just say it's not really like that. Although it does try to be like Rivals, it doesn't seem to appeal quite as much. Mostly because of it being more recent, it probably needs a lot more time for us to adjust. We probably need to spend more time to adjust to it, as opposed to Rivals, which is now 8 years old. And Heat is only 2 years old. So of course, there's a big 6-year gap that happened between both of them. And of course, we can't forget that 2015 and Payback pretty much were there to take up the time that would be between Rivals and Heat. And even though Heat tries to take some elements from Rivals, again, it doesn't really appeal as much as Rivals did, because at least it was rather impressive to be able to combat the police by any moment. It's interesting to note, though, that maybe a fourth and final flaw that I will go ahead and define really quickly was the fact that, well, let's just say the game cheats on you sometimes. And I'm serious when I say that. I'm literally tearing up in that moment because at one point in February 2020, a face cam specials Insurgents episode that was pretty much just another big playthrough of Need for Speed Heat taking place involved me at the time with a large mustache, of course. So anyways, I was playing Need for Speed Heat at that point in time. I was reacting to the kind of footage I had, and guess what happened? I was basically going in with a hatchback. The police, of course, had surrounded me. I was able to struggle free from them as the little bar down in the center pretty much showed up and said that I had only a limited window to get out of there before I would be arrested. And believe it or not, here it comes. The game pulled the plug on me right when I got out of there. I was far away from the police and I was moving faster than they could have catched me there. I was freaking moving there. And yet, guess what? The meter still filled up all the way and I still got arrested for that. Like, what happened here? That's cheating! I'm serious. It hasn't even been 2 years since that happened, and I still feel the same about it. Because it's a cheat. That's what it is. Oh my gosh. Like, seriously. It's like, what were they thinking here? Putting up a huge cheat up there, throwing curveballs at your nose, and changing the rules like that? Like, what is this? Is this Need for Speed, or is this Life of Black Tiger on LJN Video Art with an Atari 5200 trackball controller? Really? Just, really? There is nothing logistical about this. Nothing at all that can justify such a horrible thing like that. So at this point, let it be known that that right there is the fatal flaw in this game. I consider this to probably be a bit of a bane in most ways. Specifically because of this. But yet, I have to be very honest about everything else. The story, it can be pretty extensive, but yet it's a bit intuitive. This game's got a lot of open world varieties to choose from. Tons of activities including time trials, drags, races, and circuits and all that good stuff. On-road, off-road, pretty much. Of all sorts of things that you can potentially have. It's also got an amazing variety of vehicles, tons of nice upgrades to choose from, and a variety of rather amazing wraps and other paint decorations and the like that you can potentially customize. For example, there was this one point where I went on ahead and got a Mercedes-Benz G-Class. And I went ahead and slapped on the Jurassic Park decorations on it. Because you know what? Mercedes-Benz and Jurassic Park, they go so well together. Especially because Mercedes has been a pretty big sponsor for the series, even to this day. So it's fair to say that I went on ahead and made my own little contribution to GWK by bringing in Jurassic Park into a Mercedes-Benz model that I got to drive around for a little while. So I will say that this game can be rather intuitive and has some nice innovations into it that you can potentially not overlook, which would be important to get to know about how the overall scoring of the game itself is and how it could potentially be rated by most people out there, from Metacritic and many other such sites out there related to game ratings. But nevertheless, I don't know what else to possibly talk about this, so I'll just leave it as it is. Because, well, let's just say, throughout some more times I'll probably be able to talk about a lot of other things here and there, so I'll just leave this as it is. So if you want to see more go down on my channel, then make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.